Hey everybody, it's the day after Comsverse. It was all go at the show, and I caught up with Andrew at the show on the Tango announcement. I thought it was worth jumping on to talk about it in a bit more detail. Hey Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, Tom, great to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for the time. So for those that haven't heard, quite a big announcement around Teams and what you're doing with Teams. Can you just explain briefly what you're doing there?
Sure. So, Tango have released a product called Tango Extend, which is designed to provide native mobile extensions for any user of Teams phone. Designed to make it really to take your Teams business number onto your mobile phone and have a high quality native experience of calling from your mobile.
So this is taking your fixed line, so your operator connect or your direct routing number, and you're routing it through to mobile. So how does that work?
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about why we do this and the kind of outcome, and then we can look at how the pieces all come together.
Great.
But this sort of goes back to some work that I'd been doing for a number of years with some big clients, people in manufacturing, people in secure environments. I ran voice services for the Ministry of Defense for a few years. I built out a big Avaya cloud for Kraft Heinz globally. And all of these organizations were looking to move to cloud and very often to a Teams environment. And their challenge was, what is the right device to take calls on? And their options turned out to be quite limited. Historically, of course, they had, big Nortel phones on desks or Avaya phones
Yeah,
on
the
desks,
plastic on desk, the
plastic
classic.
on desk, and now dusty plastic on desk and unused, all of these old
Yeah.
sunk assets. And they didn't want to use those. They didn't want to bring in a whole, hundreds of thousands of nice, shiny Teams phones on desks because, in a hybrid world, in a working from home world, people just don't go to those desks. And so their options really were either I use a laptop, a client on a laptop, which is great for use cases where people are constantly sitting in front of their laptop, the kind of knowledge worker, the person who's always working from their home or possibly the office and nowhere else. But for everybody else, the mobile phone becomes the obvious place to take and receive calls. And Teams client is great for making and receiving calls. But the problem is that that client is expensive for a large enterprise to deploy. You want to put it on somebody's phone. You've got to get to that real estate and manage that real estate for security. MDM, putting devices on either the employee's phone, which employees don't like and is costly from an IT services point of view, or providing the employee with a company provided mobile phone. That's even more expensive. And indeed, when you have a client on a phone, the voice is running over the mobile internet. There's no quality of service. One call in 5 or 10 is pretty unusable in a mobile internet context.
Yeah, you're at the mercy of the data, aren't you? So it
You are
depends on
totally.
where you are. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's abysmal. I'm out in Hitchin in Hertfordshire, and as I drive around, sometimes you can get away with it and sometimes you can't.
And voice is one of those services that absolutely is critical. If I'm calling people, then I need those calls to work. If I'm going to give my CEO a phone to make phone calls, telling him that, most of the time it'll be okay, is sort of not good enough. And so we're left with not very many options. Has to be mobile because of the work style we all have. Has to be high quality and guaranteeable quality. Has to be something that is paid for by the enterprise. Has to be something that doesn't require an intrusive injection of software onto the employee's phone. And the easiest way of doing that, in fact, the only way of doing that in these days, is to put an eSIM onto the phone, something provided by the company, and make that eSIM a native part of the Teams calling experience. And so
So for
that's
those
what
not maybe not everybody's familiar with eSIM. So eSIM is a virtual mobile number. So essentially, you can have often on many phones, like the higher end phones, you can have a second number
Exactly.
as an eSIM, or on some phones you can have eSIM as your first number, but you're tying that back to the Teams fixed line number.
Exactly that. Exactly that. So a modern mobile phone does a good job of managing two lines on the phone. And I can have my personal line and my business line, and they're entirely separate. I see separate, call histories. I see the ability to define a contact as being a business contact or a personal contact. Um, and I can do that with putting two SIMs into the phone. But these days, one of those SIMs can be a soft SIM that's downloaded from an app, and so I go into my Teams environment. I open the Teams Extend configuration app. I log into that. I'm given a QR code. I scan the QR code, and immediately my phone has my Teams business line as that second line on my phone.
Yeah, I've been through that process. So it's QR code. So essentially, the Teams app generates QR code. You take a snapshot of the QR code onto your mobile, and that's what embeds the SIM on your mobile, essentially.
Exactly right. And so, if we think for a moment about the sort of use cases where this really transforms the experience of Teams, I talked earlier about really a horizontal use case, which is kind of we all need to have phone calls that work on our mobile phone. But more specifically, there are some very important use cases where that's absolutely critical. And one set of use cases is sort of compliance. People who need to have their calls monitored and managed and recorded, salespeople, financial services, and so forth, where we're electing to use a client if I want to do so, but perhaps I don't want to do so, so I don't bother it with it. Is
Mm.
not good enough. You've got to have something that can guarantee that when I call one of my customers, that call's going to go through Teams, is going to be recorded, is going to be monitored, is going to be managed.
Yeah, so in this
That's
scenario, is they're using the native dialer or they're getting dials in from Teams. The calls are going through Teams. So if you've got Teams compliance recording, these are going to get captured like any
exactly,
other call, even though they're on the mobile device, they're a Teams call essentially.
exactly that, exactly that. And then the other sort of class of use cases is what we and Microsoft and Cisco and others call the frontline worker use case. That is people who are out there in the field, spending all of their time talking to people. They might be, delivery drivers. They might be health workers. They might be people in retail or manufacturing, or even professional services. And those people really have no mechanism to start using software on their phone and so forth. They just want the phone just to be a device for making calls. The person they're talking to needs to see a call from the business, not from my personal number. When that person in the community calls back, I don't want them to be calling on my personal number, possibly at 2 o'clock in the morning, or when I'm not the right person to be communicated with. I might be a rota of people. And so
Yeah, so in this
frontline work,
scenario, they could be BYOD for their device as well, potentially. So if
exactly
their
right.
own mobile, it's their
Exactly.
personal number, they don't want to be using it for business, they don't want to be charged on their
Yeah,
personal mobile plan for business. So the second SIM would be their Teams number, and inbound, outbound, it will present either as their personal Teams number, or you can use Teams to map the number to a generic business number as well.
exactly. And you can imagine the sort of a gig economy employees where somebody comes to work for a business for a period of time, or for a short period of time, perhaps a few hours here or there, or a few weeks here or there. Clearly, you're not going to provide that individual with a company provided mobile phone, but you do want to provide that individual with the ability to call as part of the business, receive calls and make calls under control of the enterprise and using the enterprise's numbers. And an eSIM downloaded to the phone, removed a few hours later, is a perfect solution.
Nice. So how's this work? I've got quite a technical audience. Like practically speaking, how's this work? It sounds like magic, but obviously there's some technology here, right? Um,
Sure.
uh, Is it
So
any operator connect, any direct routing? Do they work with you, and what's the logistics of that?
So the magic of this is that Tango is a what we call a full stack MVNO. And that means that we have total control over the way that our SIM connects to a broad range of mobile networks around the world. In the UK, for instance, we're on the EE network. In the US, we're on the AT&T network. So high quality mobile networks. And when the eSIM connects, we do all the magic of translating that into something that looks to Teams like a Teams phone, like a Teams endpoint. So the
Yeah.
mobile phone suddenly becomes a desk phone in Teams's context. It's a device. It's a device that's registered into Teams, just like any other device. And I can use Teams to configure when that device is alerted and what happens when that device makes a call. Now,
Yeah.
like
So
any
so for
other,
those in Teams, that's SIP gateway, isn't it? So
that's
essentially
right.
you're registering through SIP gateway, so it becomes another extension via SIP gateway.
Exactly.
So Teams soft phone will ring and Teams SIP phone, which is
Exactly.
mapped to your eSIM, will ring.
Exactly. And like any other device, we don't own a number. There is no number, on my phone. The number is my subscriber number as part of Teams. And that can be any operator connect or direct routing number. It's just a calling plan in Teams. And when my mobile phone registers into Teams, it is given that number. So now immediately and automatically with no configuration, my mobile phone is my extension on Teams and is using whatever my DID is in Teams.
Yeah, so it's not SIM ring, it's not forking, it's literally you'll have your fixed line, like national number appear as a mobile number
Exactly.
and a secondary mobile number on that
Exactly.
mobile.
Yep.
Nice. And it depends on you working with a particular carrier. So I think you're launching with NTT as a carrier, but potentially other carriers could offer this service where they allow their customers to have this extension capability to bring it to mobile.
We're working with a broad range of service providers like NTT and also systems integrators. Um, any systems integrator who is able to sell Teams direct routing or Teams operator connect, any NTT reseller. So we've worked with NTT to jointly certify Tango Extend along with NTT calling plans, and we're doing that increasingly across a broad range of direct routing infrastructures, and operator connect services. By the end of the year, pretty well every operator connect provider and commonly available direct routing infrastructure will have been cross-certified to work alongside Tango Extend.
Awesome. And if people want to find out more, either in the industry, in the carrier operator space, or if they're end user organizations, what's the best thing to do, Andrew?
Go to our website, which is www.tango-networks.com. Lots of information on there and lots of opportunities to request further information. I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Bale. Most people in the industry can find me pretty quickly there, and I'm always ready to take questions and follow up.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, if you've got questions about the solution, how it works, how you can get hold of it, drop them in the comments below and we'll have a conversation there as well. Thanks for Andrew for giving us an insight into how that all works and good luck with the launch.
Great to talk to you, Tom. Thank you so much for all your support.